Finally, everybody, it's about time. No, seriously, I'm like a week late to this, I know, but we're gonna be talking about E3 and what ended up actually happening at E3. Now, we're gonna end up skipping over the cringe stuff, like what happened with Ubisoft, EA.
We're extremely excited for everybody to play it when we launch on September 28th.
Sony. And instead, we're going to be focusing on the games themselves. So I wanted to kind of talk about the games that I found interesting, some of the games that I didn't find quite as interesting, and then the games that actually have my interest absolutely peaked. Now, E3 as a whole this year was pretty bad, honestly. Like, we ended up having a lot of really cool game announcements, but a lot of the games are coming out next year, and well, most of the games that they ended up talking about, and they're having as a scheduled release for usually like in March of 2019 or February of all things. But then on top of that, all of the newer games that actually got me interested that were announced ended up being games that, I mean, for all intents and purposes, these were teaser videos. Like, there's no gameplay and they're nowhere near finished at all. So let's talk about some of the games that are lower on my list while still being interesting and something that I think is worth checking out if it's a game that you guys are into. There's Dying Light 2. Now, I never ended up playing the first one, but I heard that it was actually really, really good. And Dying Light 2 looks beautiful. It's pretty much a blend between like Mirror's Edge first-person parkour with a really in-depth melee combat and a world that is basically filled with like a bunch of zombies and otherwise evil people. And one of the big things they keep advertising that they're going to be doing with this game is based on some of the choices that you end up making in the game, the world is going to actually reflect that. Now, as far as I can tell, it's just going to be something as far as a vanity of the world. So it's like just cosmetic, you know, the world's going to end up having grass in one area if you end up going the route of helping people find water, or it is going to end up being a little bit more desolate if you don't. But then there's going to also be certain things where it's like if you end up helping one of the factions end up getting to the top so that they're in charge of everything, you know, then there might be more of them out in the world. But then if you end up betraying them, you're going to end up making the world a lot harder for yourself, you know? Next, we'll talk about Gears of War 5, which, I mean, it's cool that they ended up announcing this one. I remember the original Gears games I was into. I think I played up to 3 and then I just stopped. But this one seems like it's going to end up being a good addition to the series. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like we got, you know, Phoenix as being the main character again. We've got some other random character that I have known nothing about. The game itself just kind of looks like the same old stuff. It's just going to be generic shooter things, but also is going to end up having very high production. They almost always end up pushing the graphic fidelity up through the roof because these guys use the Unreal Engine, and usually they'll end up actually releasing a new type of Unreal Engine, like a new version of it, where they really start to try and push things. Most of all, what I would be interested in this game is the creatures. I think that they actually look really grotesque and cool. You know, and the violence of the game has always been something that I was kind of into as well, because I ended up growing up with Turok 2, and Turok 2 was one of the original games where you could shotgun a guy and he would explode into a million pieces. And now in Gears, it's kind of gonna end up doing the same thing. But it seems like they're going for a very serious, more darker approach with this one, which I think is interesting altogether. But you know, it's not going to be a game that I'm going to end up playing. I just thought that it was interesting and cool to talk about. Despite the fact that everybody, and I mean everybody, went crazy and started talking about Cyberpunk 2077, I'm honestly not really interested. I know that that probably sounds very strange, but what can I say, guys? Like, to me, it's just another game that looks like it's going to be kind of Grand Theft Auto-ish, probably going to end up being a third-person shooter, but also might end up being a little bit more story-driven. Maybe it's because Cyberpunk has never really been the style that I've been into that much. So, of course, you know, other people might be really, really into it, but that doesn't mean that I won't end up eventually playing it. Maybe the game's going to end up being that good that you gotta play it, but it seems like it's kind of a blend between Watch Dogs and Mass Effect to me. So, you know, we gotta wait and see what ends up happening with it, but, you know, it kind of seems to have a very growing world that reminds, or a very cyberpunk kind of machine world that reminds me of Ghost in the Shell and Blade Runner. So it could end up being really, really good for people that are into that kind of thing. Anthem still seems kind of cool. Like, it's a game that I'm into for sure, because it kind of seems like it's a third-person open world game like Halo that also is going to end up having RPG elements. But there are certain things about the game that just don't really have me completely sold on it yet. Most of all, the fact that it's only going to end up being 4-player co-op, and then you can also kind of choose the mech or class that you want to pick while you're going out in the world. And it generally seems like you might only be able to have 1 or 2 of them per adventure. So I'm wondering whether or not that's it's limited, like the amount of, let's say, the warrior class that you could end up using, right? Because he seems pretty cool, but maybe that's not the case. The game seems to definitely have extremely high production, and lots of people keep saying online that it's going to end up being EA's version of Destiny, but honestly speaking, this game looks a lot more interesting to me than Destiny, but that's mostly just because it's third person, you know? But the game itself kind of has like, it's got this weird kind of Borderlands-esque level of RPG elements, while also just trying to end up being like really, really fancy, having lots of explosions and stuff like that, and just kind of seems like it's going to be a mindless shooter. So we'll have to wait and see with that one. I am interested in it, but I don't know whether or not I'm going to end up actually playing it myself, especially because it's going to end up being like $80. Ghost of Tsushima looked really, really cool. It's kind of like you're a samurai in like the olden times, and seems to have like a really kind of more in-depth combat system where you really gotta be more strategic with your fights. Obviously your character is like really, really good at fighting. It's kind of like you're the best, obviously, but the game itself seemed very, very artistic, you know, and that's something that I am interested in games for sure, but I'm not necessarily excited to play it. A lot of the games that Sony ended up showing off, honestly speaking, kind of had this same vibe and made me more so want to watch somebody play through it without commentary so that I could get an experience for the game world and the game story and everything like that, rather than actually being excited about playing it myself. Death Stranding, the next game being made by Hideo Kojima, who's the guy who's obviously delivered Metal Gear and everything like that. He's got an insanely crazy world. You got like babies and side people that end up helping you to find these creatures that are invisible, and they're kind of darkness and everything. And there was a lot of mystery surrounding the world of this game. There still is, and that's the kind of the part of the game that still has me very intrigued. Again, this is all Sony, so it was like really, really like artistic, right? But the graphics are absolutely spectacular. Those little nuances and details that you find very often in Hideo's games is really, really up there. You know, your character kind of is like, I don't even know what this world is. There's all this darkness going on, but it's like your character gets goosebumps, kind of like a spider sense whenever these invisible creatures are around, and the game kind of teases at that, you know, a little bit later in the video that we saw. But the gameplay itself, weirdly enough, is just like a package delivery game. Like, it's got insane animation. And navigating through the world, like, it seems like it's a very vast open world environment that I think can end up being something kind of cool because of the fact that the creatures kind of blend into that. So there is definitely a story kind of driving the player forward, but the gameplay itself does just seem like a walking simulator, which a lot of people are kind of against. But you know, for myself personally, I do actually think that it's kind of interesting, because I think that this game could end up having a nice blend between the relaxation aspect of actually delivering the packages and stuff, while also the further you end up getting with those packages and the chances of actually failing could end up being quite stressful at a very, very simplistic value. The Last of Us 2 looks superb. I can't even believe the amount of animation and detail that they've put into this game, where it feels like an interactive movie experience. Like, it's crazy. Now, I can't really show you guys that much of the gameplay, unfortunately, because this game is extremely graphic and extremely violent, something that I personally am not really that into. I do still think the game is going to end up being phenomenal, though. This is made by the guys that made the Uncharted series. Pretty much think of it as Uncharted, but a lot more serious, and at least the first one anyways kind of ended up having zombies and stuff. This one seems to more have crazy people. Rage 2. Now that was exciting that they ended up talking about this. I don't think I'm going to end up playing it, despite the fact that I loved Rage 1, and let me explain why. Because with Rage 1, there was no more recent Doom game, but it has since made Doom 2016, which is one of my all-time favorite shooters, right? And then, you know, now I've got that already. I've got that my system where I got to play that game, so I don't know if I'm necessarily interested in Rage 2. For those of you that don't know, Rage 1 was kind of a more linear experience where you had outdoor and big environmental maps, while also still having the standard gameplay that you get in an id game. Like, these guys are the best. The guns always feel absolutely spectacular, and they ended up having some really fun driving mechanics as well. There was a couple parts in the game that actually forced you to kind of do like a Mario Kart World Derby tournament, but it was fine because in that game, you know, the mechanics of the cars were actually really sick. Like, they were really fun to play, and kind of ended up bringing the Road Warrior vibe to the whole thing with the weird universe that they've got, right? So what they're doing with Rage 2 is they've ended up teaming up with the team that ended up making the Road Warrior game, and this is going to end up being a more like actual open world experience of a first-person shooter, which I do think is a match made in heaven. Like, this game does look beautiful. It really does. It seems like it's a single-player Borderlands that is going to end up being more focused on the shooting aspect rather than actually having RPG elements. That said, your character is still going to end up getting certain powers, and the world is going to end up being pretty crazy, and it's very brutal. It's very to the point, and it looks like it's going to end up being a lot of fun. But games like this, you know, I just don't really have as much time for these as I want. Alright, so this is going to end up being the last game that we're going to talk about that I'm not planning on playing, and this one is probably going to end up surprising a lot of you. Kingdom Hearts 3. I don't care. I'm sorry, right? But it's like, it took them too long. It took them way too long. You know, Kingdom Hearts 1, I did play through that one. Most of all, I ended up watching my brother play through it. It was one of his favorite games. He played through it like over and over again, doing the harder difficulties and stuff like that. And it's just, you know, they're great games. They really are. Kingdom Hearts 2, we kind of tried, but didn't really get as interested in it because of the whole beginning where you're playing as like a completely different character and kind of fighting towards Sora. And I'm not really into that as far as like a story is concerned. I felt Kingdom Hearts 2 kind of took a step away from kind of the cute Disney aspect of the game and started being a little bit too serious. But again, it's not like I played through the full game, so I could be dead wrong about that. But Kingdom Hearts 3 just looks like it's more of the same. You know, there's lots of people that are really excited about this, obviously, because it's been like, what, 5 years or something like that since the last Kingdom Hearts game, with like a million iterations in between. So I don't know, I guess it's cool for Kingdom Hearts fans, but for me it's a little too late. Like, I just don't care at this point. So before we get into the games that I am interested about, one thing I did want to address that I'm pretty sure was the big question on everyone's mind when it came to Ubisoft, in that, why didn't they show a new Splinter Cell? Like, seriously, we've been waiting for that. Like, I was so sure that they were going to end up announcing a new Splinter Cell, especially because more recently for E3 they ended up having a sale on a lot of their games, including buying the entire Splinter Cell franchise for like $30. I ended up buying it, playing through a lot of the old games, and I was just sitting there thinking, man, that last Splinter Cell kind of sucked. When are they going to end up making a new one? And with hints that they ended up dropping in the Ghost Recon Wildlands game, where you ended up actually doing a specific side mission where you would end up interacting with Sam Fisher, and he actually ended up having Michael Ironside's voice acting again instead of that random guy that they tried to force us to enjoy in the last Splinter Cell. Needless to say, I am a big Splinter Cell fan, guys. Like, when I was growing up, my brother actually started as playing Splinter Cell, and I started playing Metal Gear, and somewhere along the lines, like, we ended up beating both of the games, but then we ended up swapping and trying each of the different games. My brother became an instant fan of Metal Gear, while I became an instant fan of Splinter Cell. I've always loved the level design, and I could just go on and on about Splinter Cell. Like, seriously, this is one of the franchises that I was really, really excited about, but for some reason, Ubisoft didn't announce anything. They just showed off the new Assassin's Creed, which looks really, really boring to me. It just looks like it's another Assassin's Creed, but just with a reskinned map and a new price tag. Like, what can I say? So I ended up finding a couple articles online that are talking about the exact same thing, mentioning how, Splinter Cell was kind of mentioned in the Ghost Recon Wildlife or Wildlands area, and fans were just waiting to see this happen. So I don't know. Most of all the articles go into the fact that this is all just rumor and speculation, rather than actually talking about why they didn't end up announcing a new title. And it was really disappointing for me. Like, it seriously was, to not actually see another Splinter Cell. Like, I was sitting there and I was watching Ubisoft's press conference with my girlfriend. And I just kept saying, like, every time they would end up showing a game, I was sitting there just going, like, is this Splinter Cell? And it was like, it never was. All we really got was, like, a couple sequels to games that I really, really don't care about. Anyways, let's get into it. So Spyro is getting a remake. That's crazy. I grew up with Spyro. Like, that was one of my early boy games, dude. Like, Spyro 1. I remember one of the funnest things. Like, I found it so cool back in the day. This just goes to show how, video games were back in the day, where I was so excited, and what sold me on this game was I was playing one of the demos in a gaming store, because gaming stores used to actually have playable demos of these games, right? And you could actually use your fire breath to light a cannon that would then end up shooting at an enemy that was in the distance. And that was, like, so interactive for the time and so fun for me being a little kid. That sold me on the game, and then I ended up actually buying it, right? It's funny how, like, these games, that I ended up getting into as a kid, most of all was just because I got to actually try it, and it did something that ended up actually attracting me to the game. Now, that said, I don't know if I'm going to end up playing through all of the Spyro games, because this is going to end up being a remake for $30, where you get Spyro's 1, 2, and 3. These games have been designed from the ground up. Possibly we could end up playing through Spyro 2 and 3 on the channel, but guaranteed I am going to be playing through Spyro 1 for sure. Spider-Man on PS4 finally got some more gameplay shown off, which, I mean, at this point, it's not like we need that much to sell us on it. This game comes out later this year, and obviously, I am extremely excited about it, you guys. Like, I've been excited about Spider-Man on PS4 ever since they ended up announcing it, because Insomniac Games, or whatever, Insomniac's going to end up being the guys that are tackling this. So, I'm expecting that we're going to end up seeing a lot of the same fidelity that we've got from the Ratchet and Clank series. And overall, there's lots of people always speculating, is this going to be the best Spider-Man game? Yes, it is, because this is going to actually end up being a big-time AAA company that knows what they're doing when it comes to stuff like this. Like, you look at the Ratchet and Clank series, it's perfect to bring those guys into the Spider-Man universe, because Ratchet and Clank kind of has that light-hearted, humor that we're going to end up expecting to see out of Spider-Man, where he's being presented with these very serious situations, having all of the bad guys all fight him at once, and it feels great, dude. It's like we're going to end up getting not only the definitive Spider-Man experience, where we're going to actually get to feel like Spider-Man, like every Spider-Man game, but on top of that, we're going to have an improved combat system, and we're going to end up having hopefully a really interesting story. Doom Eternal, guys. Oh my goodness. When I first saw this teaser at Bethesda, I thought, I was just sitting there thinking that this was going to end up being DLC for Doom 2016, and I was excited enough. I thought they were just going to end up adding some more campaigns to it, and I was just like, ooh, that sounds interesting. While also, they're kind of showing off a lot of the old classic Doom creatures that they didn't have in 2016. 2016's Doom are going to end up kind of being revised and brought back into this. But this is not downloadable content. This is actually a full-on Doom sequel. So this is going to be Doom 2, or Doom Eternal, they call it, right? And it seems like it's going to end up being the apocalypse. So it's very, very similar and very much like a throwback to the old classic Doom 2, where Doom 1 was kind of more corridor-based and stuff like that. And then Doom 2, though still corridor-based, ended up introducing tons of enemy types while also just kind of expanding upon the universe of what we already ended up seeing in the first Doom game. Now, what I'm really, really hoping about this one is they're going to end up having co-op. And I'm not talking about their weird snap map. I'm talking about an actual proper co-op system where we're going to be able to play through the campaign, not only offline, but online, because that was the definitive Doom experience for me, was being able to play through the campaign with my friends. Last but not least, this had me the absolute most hyped, and it's the shortest little bit of a teaser ever, where Bethesda was just doing what they do, you know, announcing Fallout 76, Elder Scrolls Blades, which I'm actually really excited about. But more importantly than all of that, guys, and I'm still, even right now, I don't even have the audio on, and I'm watching this and I'm getting goosebumps. Elder Scrolls 6 has been announced. Now, hopefully we're going to get to see some gameplay sometime next year at E3, but oh my gosh, you guys, seriously, like, I am a huge Elder Scrolls fan. Like, I've played almost all of them. You know, even Daggerfall and stuff like that, the older garbage ones, I did actually play them. I never really got into them. But my first Elder Scrolls game was Morrowind on the Xbox, the Xbox original, I mean, and that was like an insane experience for me. That was the first single player RPG that I got that involved with. Like, I played that game for years, man. Like, I seriously, it was one of my all-time favorite games. There was so much to do. There was so much content. The possibilities were pretty much endless in that game. It actually was. And then when Oblivion came out, played the heck out of that one, but you know, I kind of felt that it pulled away from the game a little bit. You know, it wasn't really as interactive as Morrowind. And then Skyrim came out and just knocked the pants off of all the other Elder Scrolls games. And right now, we just pretty much have Elder Scrolls Online to keep our retention until they end up releasing Elder Scrolls 6. But we have Elder Scrolls Blades coming out, which I'm definitely interested in that. Probably going to end up doing a mini-series on it, because basically it's going to end up being an Elder Scrolls game that you can play on your phone, on your PC, and in a VR headset. And you can either fight against other players, and it's cross-platform, so a VR player could fight somebody that's playing on their phone. But on top of that, it's got roguelike aspects, so I'm sold. Anyways, guys, hopefully I'll be able to cut this video down a bit in editing, because otherwise it is a fat beast of a video. And I just wanted to share my thoughts towards all the E3 stuff, let you guys know what ended up happening and what ended up sparking my interest. We didn't talk about Halo Infinity, because I honestly don't really care, and Battlefield 5 did seem very, very beautiful, but again, it's not really a game that I'm personally interested in. And yeah, that pretty much ends up covering all of the E3 stuff. So thanks for watching, everybody. Hopefully you found a game that you were interested in. Microsoft ended up also showing off like 50 different indie games. Not really anything that had me particularly excited, but it still did look pretty cool. Like, some of those games looked really artistic, and some of them looked like things that I would end up being into. But I'm not really holding my breath for any of it, and just gonna kind of wait and see what ends up happening, right? But I would like to know what you guys think. Leave your comments in the comment section down below. What are the games that you were most excited about E3? Which conferences do you think were the funniest or the best as far as like game reveals, or just the amount of cringe that they ended up having in them?
And as we're about to show you, they delivered big time.
But either way, thanks for watching, everybody. Very much appreciate it. Sorry that this video is like a week late, but things have just been so busy for me that I don't know. I just kind of get to it when I get to it. In either case, though, folks, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like the video and hit that notification bell if you want to know about new videos and stuff coming out. But then on top of that, if you want to support me, you can always sponsor my YouTube channel or check links in the description for my merch store, where you can buy this beanie and a bunch of other shirts and stuff like that, as well as there's going to be a link to Gawkbox, which is a way you can donate to me for free through sponsored donations. Doesn't work for everyone in Europe, though. Sign on and stay epic, everybody.